Cassie, you have just put in front of me possibly the sexiest cabbage I have ever seen. Hey?
It looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And smells incredible.
So if you stay with us in about 28 minutes, hopefully, Cassie will tell you how to make... Honestly, I've got a cabbage in front of me that looks like a piece of art.
Masterpiece, isn't it?
You know, if I'd have gone back to being a kid, when I think probably most people, especially of my sort of age, were put off cabbage by being in the school queue at lunchtime where you're trying your plate and you're working your way along. And there's a lady that looks quite serious and a little bit frightening with her spoon saying, "Do you want some of this?" And you're looking at this sort of slightly slimy pile of stuff, which is cabbage.
Yeah.
But actually, as the years have gone on and I've grown it and I've played with it, and then again, I don't know, growing up, there was always cabbage, but now kales have rocked up, and that was never really a big thing when I was a youngster. And broccolis, and they've all become a huge part of our lives. And even with my kids, broccoli, fine. I don't know about when they were growing up. Kales, I could always do something with, but there was something a bit of a mental block with a lot of people about cabbage. But all of those plants are incredibly good for you, aren't they?
They are, yeah. We all know that greens are really good for us. They're packed with iron, but they also provide vitamin K, folate. They're immune supportive with selenium. They're just full of nutrients. They're so good for us, and we should all be eating more greens. And added bonus, they are delicious if you cook them properly.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to go down the sloppy, khaki cabbage route. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can cook your brassicas to make them really delicious.
Yeah, and I'd like to sit here and tell you how successful I am at growing them. But in a weird way, they're my nemesis.
Okay.
No, that's not 100% true. There's ways that I've found around it. But wherever I seem to have tried to grow, especially kale and cabbage, I have had more cabbage white butterflies than, so they can be well and truly mullered, you know. But also, even the house that we're living in at the moment, because I've put a load out there, why is it that all the pigeons in the vicinity have decided to come and live on my roof? You know,
you're growing the good stuff.
Exactly. And I'm organic as well, so all I ever do is I net things over, and it still seems that netting gets broken through at some point in the season. So what I end up doing is I plant outside the net, so that I sort of sacrifice plants, but I also always end up growing more than what I need, knowing that I'm not going to get what I need. I'm not going to get a perfect crop from them, you know. But they are a plant that, you know, especially if you look at something like the Italian kale, which again we grow a lot more of now, and you do see that one in the supermarkets. They look really beautiful.
Yeah.
So I have interplanted those in ornamental borders. They can look really quite sculptural and interesting, because you've got, if you look at kale, see there's a red kale called red boar. And one thing I did one year is someone had said to me, the red vegetables don't get attacked so much, and I didn't, and I still to this day don't know exactly why. I think there's obviously something in the chemical makeup of the plant, but I tried the red kale and normal green kale, curly kales, and I got away a lot more with the red kale.
Oh, okay.
It was more successful. So that's another thing that I've done. I've started to grow a lot more kales. But interestingly, what you realise is they're a plant. They react an awful lot to temperature. All those sort of veggies, they'll take a certain amount of semi-shade. So if you've got a plot and some of it's in the sun, some of it's not, then it's one of the go-tos to fill those slightly shadier spots, not necessarily deep shade, but light shade. They'll deal with it.
Okay.
So they're a good plant for that. I've grown them in containers, like I say, in the borders, work really well. But I said about that temperature level, I can remember, so the house before we're in now, and this is a good thing with veggies in general for people, we always talk about a good season, a bad season, and I've said to you a few times about not necessarily putting these plants out too early because of the wrong side of temperatures, the cold and whatever. But understanding your veg garden is hugely important, and there'll be micro temperatures in your veg garden. I think you're just about staying awake with me, aren't you?
No, I'm following.
Well, you can see she's glazing over. She's gone really deep horticulture on me now. It's like, can we just get to the cooking bit? Yes, it was going ever so well.
Come on, teach me. I want to learn
Teacher. And I suppose it's the first time really I've talked about understanding that, the way the sun moves through. And the reason I'm doing it is because I planted kale against an east-facing wall, all right, coming out in a raised bed that I created. And why I'm telling you is because it was a stone wall. It had the sun hit it in the morning, and then obviously then went off it. Well, the stone wall must have sucked up that heat, because as I planted coming away from this wall, the kale back close to the wall got well over a metre. And as it came away from the wall, it slowly got smaller.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so when you are veg garden and it says in the book, hot sunny space, or it says semi-shade, really watch that space through a 12-month period. If you're growing something like that in a pot, fine, because you can tease it in and out.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say you can grow them in pots, because I've never attempted to grow any cabbages or kales, because I've always assumed they take up loads of space.
Well, yeah.
I see these big plants, and I've always thought I can't fit that in my garden, so I wouldn't attempt it. But that's really interesting.
Yeah, and something to be fair, like a kale, you could put a kale in a summer pot, in a bigger summer pot, and you could interplant it with other things, and you'll get a decent couple of feeds out of it, and they'll keep coming back. Yeah. That's the good thing as well. And one of the reasons I just leave mine is because our winters have changed so much. It can still be growing. I've had those sort of plants still growing really well in December. So it's just not, I'd say it's not as fine cut as it used to be. So my school experience of those cabbages, what was yours? What was your first sort of experience of let's call it the cabbage?
Mine was similar, actually.
Yeah.
We'd always have cabbage with a roast dinner on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And my mum, she still cooks it the same way to this day. She cooks it and then she chops it up with the spoon until it's really overcooked and not quite pleasant. But I remember once when she was experimenting and she tried a new recipe, and she did like a stuffed cabbage, and she stuffed it with rice and meat. I think she'd got the recipe off of a neighbour or something, and it was, I don't know where the dish comes from, but it felt quite Middle Eastern kind of. Yeah. I think it had some dill with it, and it was really good. And I was quite young, and I remember thinking, oh, I think I like cabbage actually. This is great. Yeah. It just goes to show it all comes down to the cooking again, doesn't it? There's lots of vegetables out there that people think they don't like the Brussels sprout. Yeah. Why do people hate a Brussels sprout? It's so delicious if you cook it properly.
I love a Brussels sprout.
It's so good.
Yeah. On that note, do you put a little cross in the end or not?
No, I don't.
Don't you?
But I prefer to halve my Brussels sprouts.
So you're doing it anyway.
Actually, with all of these kinds of veg, I would favour roasting them or a quick kind of stir fry cooking method over boiling. So you wouldn't need to put a cross in the bottom anyway. And then I think when you cut them in half, you've got more surface area for crispy bits. Yeah, you're right. And it's all about the crispy bits, isn't it?
It is all about the crispy bits. I like that. Yeah, that's another one of my takeaways. You're right, actually. But that was another one of my nan jobs, like runner beans put through. You can put the crosses in there. Yeah. And there's me, Mr. Sado here. That was an exciting thing to do. I can put the crosses. She's given me a knife and everything.
Then did she boil them for half an hour?
Then she boiled it. It was longer than half an hour. Seriously, mate, they were like mush. Yeah. They were literally like mush. And, the best thing about, and even my mother, bless her, that early veg was probably when it got cooked again the following day in a bubble and squeak and different like that. Then they tasted all right because they
tasted good.
They picked up all those different flavours. Oh, you get the crispy bits. You do get the crispy bits. So I mean, it's fun growing. Let's get you started. Because you grow much in a way of
nothing, not at all. No, I'm a newbie.
You're a newbie,
start at
right?
The beginning.
So I think for you this year, what I want you to do is I just want you to try a couple in the borders.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think have a look at the curly kales, especially the red one that I was talking about, or the nice Italians, and don't necessarily think about growing a load. You can even buy little strips of them. You'll get 6 plants in a strip, so you don't have to go through the whole seed thing. Yeah. You can start yourself off, and because they are one plant that takes up a bit of room, and I would say go and get yourself a strip, find some little spaces in your garden, and work them into the spaces.
Okay.
Yeah,
I could do that.
you can do that.
Yeah.
And what I've found with that, the one plant that I love growing slightly more ornamentally, point one, they look good. But as I said, they're my nemesis. The one time I get away with them a little bit more is if I interplant them with a lot of flowers and fruit and different bits and pieces. They seem to stay semi-hidden.
Okay.
So my success rate goes up.
Oh.
Yeah?
Okay.
But if you're going to grow them out in the garden, I suppose two ways. The old-fashioned way, to be fair, would be that you would sow direct, probably really springtime, but you would make like a seed bed. So you normally sow away from the main veg bed, and you would put them, I suppose, a depth of about just shy of a couple of centimetres. You make your little reel, you sow them out, obviously pre-water it down, and then when these plants grow, they would get to, I don't know, you can still see them on the markets every now and then. You buy a little group of brassicas, things like that, kales and whatever, wrapped up in an elastic band with the little roots hanging out.
Okay.
You know, you can still buy them like that. And that was the old-fashioned way. Grandad would do that. And then what he'd do, once they all got going, he would then start to dig them up once they got to a decent size and then replant them. So at that point, when you're replanting them, they want rich soil, drained. But as I said, they'll take an element of shade. But the weird thing about more the brassica type stuff, like a firm soil,
Yeah.
which is one of the plants that throws your mind a little bit, because so when you go to planting out, and I'm talking, you'll plant these things, a couple of foot apart.
Yeah.
And for ease of netting, what I've started doing is I've started putting them in a block. Rather than doing a long run of them, I've put them in a block and then I make a framework. But when you plant them, you're literally, when you put them in the ground, I put them slightly deeper and I ram my hand as hard as I can. It goes against everything that you feel you should do. Because if you think about it, all of those plants, when we're talking the kales, a lot of them are top heavy and they're bulky. And when you look at the root, you've got that single root coming down with little fine bits coming off. You know, the moment they start rocking, they're coming out of the ground. So they love that sort of firmness.
Okay.
So I'll plant them away, say well-manured soil, and then all I do really is put a net round. So that would be the old-fashioned way of doing it. Or what you can do is you can get them going a little bit early. So you can get them going early by just sowing some seeds in, you've probably seen little modular trays. Yeah, and you could do that on a windowsill, do it in a greenhouse. And I would grow those on, and then I would put them up into a little pot that's probably about 8 centimetres, something like that. I would then grow them on, I would then harden them off, and I would plant them out probably late spring. Going into May, that sort of thing, and then you're away.
Okay.
You know, it's interesting, this sort of, and also I think with these veggies, because things have changed so much, they're not a veg I worry too much about following the season.
Okay.
And again, it will tell you in packets, sow here, plant here. There's autumn stuff that you can plant out, there's spring stuff that you can plant out. And if you think about the world of brassicas now, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
Yeah.
So what about kales for you? What sort of, give us a nice, simple thing to do with a kale.
So I like roasting kale. I mean, I've mentioned that I think roasting any of these kind of brassicas is really good because it just brings out that little kind of bitter note and it just makes the flavours sing, really. Kale, I really like to make kale crisps. The kids love kale crisps. Yeah.
So how do you do that?
So you just break the leaves off. You don't want the tough stems. Rip them into small pieces. Toss them some oil and a bit of salt. You can add some cumin or some spices. And then, again, pop them in the air fryer or the oven. Cook them at quite a low temperature because they burn quite easily. But then within a couple of minutes, they're like crispy seaweed. And they're really delicious.
Wow.
And my kids will eat a whole bag of that, like a whole big bowl of kale crisps they will eat. And it amazes me every time. And I think you're going to catch on soon that I'm giving you kale, aren't you? But they love it. So I really like doing that. And then that sprinkled over a salad, it has that umami seaweed kind of flavour and a bit of crunch. So that's really good and a good way to use up lots of it. Through pasta, kale's really good. And a bit of chilli and garlic, really nice. It's also really nice in those kind of robust Italian stew, like a sausage and bean stew with kale through there, or even like an Italian style soup, a minestrone kind of style soup with loads of veggies, cavolo nero, a nice tomatoey broth, maybe some small pasta shapes in there, a good drizzle of olive oil on top.
You're doing it again. Oh no! I tell you, mate. I tell you, you've got booked. So Cassie, she's my new best friend. She's she's my go-to about food, and
just can't help it.
You just got to keep your phone on at weekends, mate.
Yeah.
That's all. Because when I'm in the kitchen, I'll be phoning you up. I'm just doing this. What did you say I had to do? Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So it's really versatile. And like I said, I love cavolo nero. I'm really into it at the moment. And you can make really gorgeous sauces out of it as well. If you just blanch it quite easily and then blitz it up, blanch it with a garlic clove, or a couple of garlic cloves, and then pop it into your blender with the softened garlic cloves, plenty of olive oil, salt and pepper, a bit of pecorino or parmesan, and whiz that up, and you get the most amazing, vibrant green sauce that you can toss through pasta or turn it into a soup with a bit of stock. And the colour of it is just amazing. And it's doing you so much good by eating it, just from looking at that vibrant colour. So I'd really like to grow cavolo nero. That's the thing. I think I'm going to stick that in some pots, like you say.
And I think pots, or like you say, through a border.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of friends now that are experimenting a lot more with those. I think we forget how beautiful some of those plants are, and I think we too much of the time we just and I don't know why we do it, with this idea of vegetables and fruit that goes there, and ornamentals that goes there, and I don't know whether in my head whether it was a Victorian thing, but you have the veg garden because it's away from the house and it's untidy and this, but no, I think now that idea of interplanting is hugely
And in the kitchen
important
as well, depending on the season, I'll always have a big bowl of something on the kitchen table instead of flowers, whether it's squashes and pumpkins or beautiful tomatoes, whatever it might be. I'll always have that on the kitchen table, and they look gorgeous.
Yeah,
so
they do look gorgeous. Yeah, they do.
Flowers,
no, you're right. I think you're definitely right. And I think as well with a lot of this stuff, this sort of fear factor of growing, we don't have to do it from seed. Seed is the cheapest way of doing it. But you think about that kale, that can cost a few quid.
Yeah, it's not cheap, is it?
No, it's not. And if you've got 4 or 5, 6 plants dotted through your borders, you've saved yourself quite a few bob through the season. And I think that idea of looking at plants, what about broccoli? What about broccoli? And interestingly, we talked a little bit about sprouts. All my sprouts that I'm growing now at home are all the red sprouts. And the one thing that and I can't remember what they call them. They were selling them on my local market. But as the sprouts grow, you get these sort of, they're like sprouts that sprout. All right, and you can tidy them up before you get the cleaner lot of sprouts. It's going to bug me because I can't remember the name of it. Someone will remember the name of it now. So I've got sprouts, dark sprouts growing in the garden, same sort of planting conditions, decent soil, drains, sunny conditions, but firm into the ground. Red one's really good. Changes Christmas dinner.
You don't see red sprouts in the shops, do you?
I love it. I love them. But also say these first lots of shoots. So when it gets into sort of that build up going into the winter and Christmas and whatever, I'm taking all these off, and they taste beautiful. They don't take any time to cook at all.
Yeah, wow.
And they taste really irony, as if they're putting that irony into your body, you know. So I grow quite a lot of that. Broccoli, I struggle a little bit full on broccoli, so I tend to go a bit more sort of sprouting. The more sprouting broccoli, and I cut that early and use that with the leaves. But again, same growing conditions. So if I look at the sort of sprouts first, you said about cutting them in half, giving them a little bit more. Yeah. Any other dishes, bits and pieces we can do with the sprouts?
Oh, okay. So sprouts. I think a lot of people only eat sprouts at Christmas, and that's such a shame because they are a gorgeous winter vegetable and something we should be eating when they're in season, throughout the season. And there's loads of different ways you can cook them. These kind of vegetables, they've got like a nice kind of bitter edge to them. So they balance out quite nicely with anything sweet. Yeah. So in stir fry, if you stir fry sprouts with a bit of honey and soy and chilli, a bit of garlic, Really delicious.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, they work really nicely with bacon and chestnuts and sage and all those kind of classic Christmassy flavours, but also in a gratin. You know, at Christmas, I often make like a shredded Brussels sprout, cheesy, creamy gratin with breadcrumbs on top.
Yeah.
And that is really nice alongside your Christmas dinner, to have something creamy alongside everything else that's going on. So that's one of my favourite ways to cook them as well. And just really nice with a roast chicken when it doesn't have to be for Christmas. Don't save sprouts for Christmas.
No, I think you're right.
Sprouts are for all year round.
There was one of a sort of, what was it, a Jamie Oliver recipe or something like that, one of his sort of nice go-tos, and it was a Christmassy one that I did. It was like sprouts and shallots, but the last minute what you did is you literally used like a sherry or a white wine vinegar, a good quality one, give it all a really good dousing, and then more or less smashed them.
Oh, nice.
Oh, they sucked up that flavour.
Yeah.
And they were incredible. I think, and my lot loved those. So if you said to them, sprouts, so I suppose sometimes you can put that twist on them just to turn them into
Absolutely. Yeah,
something
you can
else.
take them in so many different directions and put a bit of spice with it, put a bit of vinegar with it, like you say, and really experiment. I think sometimes we get stuck in doing something the same way over and over again, don't we? And thinking like you've got a go-to way of cooking sprouts. But, I mean, on the Good Food website, there are so many recipes.
Give
it a go and see
cool.
what you come up with.
And what about broccoli? What about broccoli? What are we going to do with broccoli? Because to be fair, broccoli seems to be a veg that kids don't shy away from.
Yeah,
Would that be
I've always sold it as mini trees. I think that does the trick, doesn't it?
mini trees?
Yeah, they feel like giants eating little bits of broccoli. My
yeah.
kids love broccoli. And again, there's loads of ways to cook it. The longer stem broccoli you mentioned is really fashionable now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I really like good old-fashioned broccoli as well.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people waste the stalk of a big head of broccoli, which is such a shame, because I think that's one of the most delicious parts.
Well, to be honest, I think that's where most of the taste is.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So definitely don't chuck that away. Chop it up nice and finely and chuck it into a stir fry, and it's delicious. It's almost got a bit of crunch, as if like a water chestnut or something. It adds a bit of texture to a stir fry. So never throw that away. And you can cut them with long stems as well, so they look almost like a long stem broccoli. You cut down the stem. But in terms of what to do with it, again, I love it roasted. All the little floret flowers get really crispy and delicious. I love that. And then just toss through a salad. Or, again, with a nice cheesy, creamy sauce baked into a gratin. It's delicious. And it goes well with blue cheese as well. Broccoli and blue cheese soup.
Yeah, he's nodding
So
here.
good.
He's nodding
Do you
here.
like
He's
the
like,
blue
I love
cheese?
my blue cheese, yeah.
Those flavours just seem to pair really well together. So I love a classic broccoli and blue cheese soup. That's a really good way to cook it.
That would be a nice way to think as well about, the veggies, writing about not just growing veggies, but what they pair well with.
Yeah.
That'd be a nice thing to do, wouldn't it? And again, when you're starting to pick your menu and work out what you're going to grow in your garden, work it as well. Another way of thinking about it is working it around the other things that you like.
Yeah.
So when you're talking, if I like the spices, or if I like the sours of the vinegars, or if I like, the cheeses that you say, and growing vegetables that suit your palate.
Yeah, because they do all have such different flavour profiles, don't they? Like so often we just stick a bit of veg on the side of the plate, and
we
it's
do.
Like the star of the show is the meat. And hopefully I'm showcasing today with this dish that I've brought along that actually the veg can be the star. And in an age where lots of us are trying to eat less meat, I think we should really embrace that. So the dish I've brought along for you today is a roasted Savoy cabbage. So we've cut it into wedges and roasted it. And I wish everyone at home could see this, because every layer of leaf is just crispy and golden and delicious.
See, this is what she does. She's doing it again. It's crispy and it's golden and it's delicious, and everything Cassie is saying is totally and utterly true. As I said, you have made a cabbage look. That is the sexiest cabbage I've ever seen.
It is pretty sexy.
And I'm not even sure that's PC, if I'm allowed to call a cabbage sexy. But I'm really not worried. I'm not worried. I'm just going to go out there and just do it. That is some sexy cabbage.
It's a good-looking cabbage. But why not make it the star of the show?
Yeah.
And you could do the same with broccoli, as lots of people now make a head of cauliflower the star of the show.
That's right.
Roast the whole cauliflower. But you can do that with broccoli as well.
Yeah.
Cover it in like nice spiced butter. Roast it off in the oven, And it's a real showstopper centrepiece for the table.
Yeah.
I can see you want to dive into this.
I do, but go on. No, but I need to know everything
Now
else
you
about it
glaze
because
over.
yeah, I know I'm not. I've got one eye on you and I've got one eye on that, just in case somebody takes it away. But go on. So tell me how that's all put together, because there's a lovely. That looks, even what we've got on top, that little topping dressing, whatever it is looks good as well.
Okay,
Go on.
So there's a few components to this dish.
Go on.
The recipe's on the Good Food website. It's tomatoey lentils on the base.
Yeah.
So you've got some red lentils cooked down in a nice spiced tomatoey sauce. And then we've roasted off the wedges of Savoy quite simply. They've got some spices through them as well. And then on top, because when you're cooking veg, it's really nice to think about the textures as well.
Yeah.
So we've got soft on the bottom, crispy, crunchy, collapsing cabbage in the middle, and then we've got another bit of crunch to go on the top, which is an olive breadcrumb, pan grattato. So it's an olive crispy breadcrumbs that we're going to sprinkle over the top just for a bit of extra flavour.
So how do you do that? How's that?
So it's just done in a frying pan, bit of olive oil, fry off the breadcrumbs, stir through. I think it's got some thyme in there. Stir off the breadcrumbs, stir through some olives, chopped olives, and the olives are bringing that really nice savoury, umami flavour as well. So we're building flavours as well. It's not just one level. There's loads of flavour and texture in there. And it just looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, honestly, it does look absolutely incredible.
Cook that for a veggie, vegan dinner party, but there's no doubt everyone around the table, vegan or not, would enjoy that.
You'd get stuck into that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Go on. I think the problem is it looks that good that I'm too scared to cut it.
I'm gonna
you cut it, and then while you're dishing it up, I suppose the idea of summarising what we're. Oh my. I can't do two things at once. I'm just watching at the moment. This is.
One.
Oh, that's amazing. Hey, I'm gone, people.
Here we go.
I'm
Take
gone.
some
Look at
extra
that.
crispy bits.
I am. I'm going to try this. Hey, so my nemesis. I always struggle away, as I've said, growing these things because of the pidgeys and the cabbage whites and whatever. But actually the tomatoes, that sort of, the colours look great as well, don't they?
They do, don't they?
Here we go.
Hopefully you'll find it's miles away from that cabbage you had in your school days.
I tell you what, if the school cook had dished that up, I played my part.
What a way to showcase a cabbage. So good.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going back.
Hopefully I'm making all the right sounds. But again, texture. So it's nice to eat.
A bit of lemon as well. And the breadcrumbs.
That is absolutely stunning.
Really good.
So I suppose really when you think about growing them, not difficult. Give them a go in the borders to start with. Something like the lovely Italian kale or a nice curly kale, something like that. Or even, they look good. Hide them away. They grow up through things. Brilliant. I suppose the key things, love good soil. We'll take a little bit of shade, a bit of semi-shade. When you're planting most of those plants, it's about firm ground, really bashing them in, give them support, so they might need a cane or something like that. And a lot of the time, because I'm organic, it's all about netting them over, protecting them. I grow, as I said, more than what I need because I know that I'm always giving some of the wildlife, but that's not the end of the world either. And then, to be fair, even if you grew cabbages and you only got one and you did that with it, would be worth growing cabbages for. Honestly, wow. So as per normal, we better leave these people and then I'm going to finish this cabbage.
Go and cook the cabbages.
Exactly. See you soon. Thanks, mate.